Alright, today we're going to be taking a look at this sniper machine on Hack the Box. And I quite enjoyed the path to user on this one. The root path, I still learned something, but one part of it was a little bit weird. Wasn't a fan of that, but we'll get onto that. But yeah, overall, quite enjoyed this box. So yeah, let's get started with an Nmap scan as always. In fact, first of all, we need to actually connect to the VPN. That would be a good idea. There we go, connected now, and the IP of this machine is 10.10.151. Do T4 to make it slightly faster, -V for verbose output, and we'll do the first 6,000 ports as usual. Hopefully this won't take too long because we're on the VIP domain. Sometimes I do find you've got to just ping a machine before it'll actually start responding to a port scan, which makes no sense really. See, now it will work. This happens quite often, is that no matter how many port scans I try and run, it won't do anything, but as soon as you ping the machine, then the VPN is suddenly kind of active, which is very odd, but that is the way it goes. I think this is actually all the ports it's going to find, but we'll let that finish. Yep, there we go, we only get these 4 ports, which is pretty nice. We don't have a lot of stuff to look at, we can just concentrate on 1 or 2 areas. So we've got 445, which is an SMB share, but if we try and go to that now, 151, we'll see that we need credentials. Well, you just have to trust me, that's going to pop up and ask for credentials at some point, but we'll leave that going in the background. For now, let's go to the website, because we saw that on port 80. Oh, this has finally popped up. It's still taking forever. We'll ignore that for now. Yeah, so we saw port 80 was open here, so we know there's a website running on here, so we'll go to that IP in a web browser, see what we get. So the first time I went through this, I was just finally decided, there we go, we finally realized that we don't have credentials, so we can't access the SMB share. So all we've got is this website. And yeah, the first time I looked through this, went through everything. User portal seems like it should be very interesting, but we don't have any credentials. Let's try just like admin and admin. See what we get. No, password not correct. So let's just go back to the main website. Obviously I tried a few other credentials in there the first time, and let's just look through all the stuff we get. We get this blog page here, and interestingly, if we click on some of these links, the download ones don't do anything particularly interesting, but the language one, when we click on either of these languages, we get in here, we get a parameter, so a question mark means that there's going to be a parameter and then its value. And in the value, it's actually specifying a PHP file. Now that might not sound weird or like anything that could be exploited, but normally you would just have a path to a PHP file, not a parameter that contains the path to a PHP file, if that makes sense. So this would normally just be like blog.php, and that would be the end of it. But because this is a parameter, because every time we change this, we get a different PHP file. So you see there we've got ES, here we'll have FR. So this is basically a user-supplied input. Like when we change this, it's just changing a parameter in the URL. So we could just change this to whatever we want. So if we try and just change it to c/windows/win.ini, like a common one, that gets page not found. So we can't just do like a real obvious local file inclusion, as it's known, LFI. But what if we try and do a remote file inclusion? So let's try and do my machine. Let's see what my IP is, 10.10.14.23, 10.10.14.23. I've got a share on my machine, so if I just go to C HTTP, this folder here is shared, so if I just show you that. So it's just shared as the word shared, and we've got anonymous access is allowed to access this. So let's just try, let's stick a text file in here or something just as a test. We'll call it test, and we'll just say hi, save that. If we try and do test.txt, so that kind of worked. We got somewhere. Let's have a look at the page source and see if it actually displayed our hi text anywhere. It did. So in the HTML body, we've got hi in there. I don't know why exactly we don't see it in here. It must just be because of the CSS or whatever the layout of the site. It doesn't actually display just text like that, but it did work. We got the actual contents from our text file in the HTML response. So now that we know that that works, we could try run, say, netcat or something like that. But we can't just run netcat here because we're going to have to pass in arguments, although you might be able to do it with like %20 for spaces. I've not actually tried that, but what I did the first time I went through it was just make this a PHP file. So let's just put PHP. My PHP is terrible, so I'm going to have to Google like PHP exec example, because exec is the command that lets you execute like any system command, so you can execute a program. So I think we can literally just do the command as a string, and that's all we need to do. So we can do PHP exec. Again, I'm not sure if this is the exact right syntax for PHP because I'm rubbish at it, but we'll do exec, and let's say we want to do my machine. We're going to have to put 4 slashes because you have to escape backslashes. So we actually only want 2 backslashes here, just like we did in here, because that's how you specify a UNC path. But because we've got to escape backslashes in PHP, you have to do double for each single one. So I'll do my IP address, which is 14.23, / again because we just want a single one, and we'll do nc.exe because we've got netcat in my share here. So we'll do nc.exe and then the arguments that we want to do. So again, my machine, and we'll do port 4455, and we'll do cmd. So just the normal netcat parameters. And I think that's all we need. Again, I'm probably missing something obvious because PHP, not my thing. But we'll try run that, see what happens. We'll leave that like that, and then we need to start a netcat listener on my machine. So we'll do nc.exe 4455, LVP, sorry. So this is now listening for a connection on port 4455. If we've got everything right here, when we try and go to this page, it should start a remote connection. So let's see what happens. So nothing happened there, which means I've probably got the PHP slightly wrong. Right, so it turned out that it was actually a problem on my machine here. I had to reset all the network connection properties and everything back to default, and now it works perfectly fine. So I don't know what was going on there, but a bit of a weird problem on this VM. Either way, we've got basically the exact same thing still. It's actually on a new share, but that doesn't make a difference to anything, which I have imaginatively named new share. But yeah, we're doing the exact same thing, running netcat, sending the IP address and the port that we want to use. So we're just going to run that. This is the contents of that file that we're going to access. So we'll run that. And, except we need to actually start a listener first, so let's try that again. And there we go, now we've got the reverse connection. So if we do who am I, we're running on this remote machine as this iUser account, which is like a built-in IS user account. So we can look around here, obviously look in the C drive, and we should find that if we go into the users folder, there's this account called Chris, so that is obviously the one that we need to get into. We don't have any credentials for that yet, but if we have a look in the where the website was, you'll see that we started in inetpub www root, which is like a default IS installation. That is the default root location that the website will be in. So if we go back into there, inetpub/www root, except we were already in users, so there we go. Now we're in there, let's have a look around in the website and see what we can find. So let's look at, go in the blog. Oh, I'm trying to remember where the interesting stuff was that I found. Let's have a look in user. So we've got login PHP. We could have a look and see how it's actually logging in. And there's auth PHP. Let's have a look at auth PHP. So nothing interesting in there. Let's have a db.php. That looks like it would be interesting, doesn't it? So we're connecting to localhost with MySQL. And we're using this DB user account and this password. So let's try this password with the Chris user account that we already know exists. Now, two issues. The first time I did this, I didn't think to try this password straight away with the Chris account. I spent ages actually accessing the SQL database and looking through there. There were some more credentials in there, but they didn't really lead to anything. So I'm kind of saving you guys all that pain, and we're just going to realize straight away that this is the password for the Chris account. But the second problem is that we can't just do run as. Because in a remote shell like this, when you do something that prompts for input, it doesn't really work properly. So we can't do it like that. I did actually write my own program that will just start a new process as a different user account, but that wouldn't work either. I tried loads of other things and eventually remembered that you can use enter PS session in PowerShell. So if we start PowerShell and we do enter PS session, you can supply credentials for a new user account that you want to enter the session of. Problem with that is that, again, that doesn't seem to work very well in this remote reverse shell. So what we need is, if we do netstat, that's n, we'll see, no, not n, sorry, is it ANO? That's the one. We'll see that it's listening on port 5985, wherever it is. Oh, there it is, sorry, at the top, I missed it already. So it's listening on port 5985, which is the PowerShell remoting port, which you would access with that enter PS session command. But the firewall isn't allowing it through, because when we did that Nmap port scan originally, we didn't see that listed. So to get around that, what we're going to do is use, there's many ways you can do this. I wrote a program to do it, which we will copy over to this machine. So we've got this port tunnel executable. We're just going to stick this in our new share because, again, the other share seems to be a bit wonky for some reason, even after resetting everything. So let's stick this in new share. So this program that I wrote just basically does the same thing that the Metasploit port forwarding system does and that the Chisel program does, but it's a little bit easier to use. So what we're going to do is we'll run it again from our share, so 10.10.14.23 /new share /port tunnel and I can't remember the parameters off the top of my head. So luckily I wrote a decent help text for it. So we just want -s for the remote server, which is going to be my IP address, so 10.14.23, and then -p for the port that we want to forward, 5985. So what this is going to do is this is going to connect outbound from this remote machine. Again, remember this command prompt here is running on the remote machine. It's going to connect outbound to my machine because I've specified my IP address. So what we need to do is open, we'll do command prompt actually, I don't like running this stuff in PowerShell for some reason. If we go to new share, and we're going to run port tunnel, and because we're on the server side here, we're just going to specify the port that we want to basically forward. So we'll do that, running in the client mode, which is what we want, and it's waiting for a connection on this port 9966, which is not really important for us, that's just how the program works in the background. So what's going to happen now is when we run this, this will connect on that port 9966 to my machine. There we go, so that is, oh no, it doesn't like that. Okay, there's a Stack Overflow says this might just be literally a permissions issue like it says. So let's just try that again. Nope, still the same thing. It's probably just because the PowerShell services are trying to use that port and we can't use it as well. So let's just stop the Windows Remote Management Service, and then we should have the port all to ourselves. So where is it? Windows Remote Management. Let's stop that. I'm sorry, I'm like really dragging out the explanation of why this works because I just kind of want to demonstrate it first. Try that again. There we go. Right, so now from the remote machine, so this one's running on the remote machine. We're connected on the remote machine to my machine, outbound or port 9966. That port again is irrelevant, just the fact that it's a different port is important. So we've got a connection between the two machines on that port. What we want is to be able to connect inbound to this remote machine on port 5985. So that's the PowerShell remote listener port basically, so that we can enter a session as a different user account. So what's going to happen now that we've got this connection over 9966, is that when I connect to my own local machine, so here I'm just going to do enter PS session, I'm going to connect to my own local machine, so localhost, but we're going to say the credentials are going to be this Chris user account, and the password is going to be that one that we got. I can't remember where it was now, what it was. There we go. So that was the password. So we're going to stick that in Notepad so that we keep track of that. There we go. So I'll put Chris as the username. Again, when I'm actually going through machines for the first time, I'm a lot more organized than this, but for now we're just being a bit slack because I'm just going to run through it quickly. So I'll put his password in. Again, we're connecting to my local machine here. But what's going to happen is, instead of the PowerShell services listening on port 5985 like they normally would be on my machine, because we've stopped that service and now we're running this port tunnel command, which is now listening on that port instead, when we connect to my own machine on that port, it's going to take that, send it down the extra port that we have going on, the extra connection, sorry, send it down this 996 port to the remote machine, which will then replay it locally on the remote machine and thus bypass the firewall. So if all works correctly, we should now, you'll see that this is now starting to receive a load of data over the tunnel, and we should eventually get connected. It is a little bit slow. I didn't do a particularly good job of optimizing this program when I wrote it, but it does work. And again, this kind of functionality is built into other programs, and there's other like off-the-shelf tools you can use. I just fancied the challenge of trying to create it myself. Right, so we had some pretty weird stuff going on there again. I don't know why nothing is going smoothly for this demo, but we are connected to the remote machine and we can do stuff. We can get into their desktop and get the user.txt file. Again, I'm not going to actually show you that, but you could just do gc user.txt and you'll get the contents of that file. So there we go. That was a very rough demo, as always. I don't know why these things just never go smoothly when I demonstrate them. Like, I can do this over and over again on my own. Everything works perfectly. As soon as I start recording, nothing works. So yeah, I might just do a quick like animation or something explaining the whole port tunneling thing, because I didn't do a good job of explaining it there. And it is quite a useful thing to sort of understand and know about. Again, you don't have to write your own program like I did. You can just use the Metasploit port forwarding feature or Chisel, or I think like SSH client even has like a built-in thing for that as well. Not that you could use that with this, but yeah. So yeah, I'll do a separate little voiceover and animation explaining the port tunneling thing, and then we'll come back to this machine. Actually, change of plan. What I'm going to do is do a whole separate video on port tunneling, port forwarding, because it's going to get referenced a lot in these videos. I already sort of explained it briefly in one other video, And then I'm trying to explain it again now, so it'll be useful to have a separate standalone video on that I can just refer people to when I have to use it in these videos. So I'll make sure that video goes up before this one, and then you can refer to that if you want to, and I'll leave a link in the description and in a pinned comment. But for now, let's crack on with the root flag on here. So, like I was saying, we can look around in here. Let's have a look in his profile, and we'll go into documents. Obviously, I just kind of checked through everything when I first got on here. Not documents, sorry, I mean downloads. And we see we've got a CHM file in there. Now if we read out the CHM file, you don't see anything useful really. But yeah, that kind of gives us a hint as to what we might need to do. You can actually copy that over, so if we just copy item CI, what was the name of it? Instructions.htm.chm, sorry. Copy it to my machine, so 10.10.14/new share, and we'll just copy it into there. Okay, it turns out CI is not short for copy item, so we'll just type it out in full. There we go, it's copied. So now we've got this CHM file in there, and if we open it, we just see this. See Sniper Android documentation, and then just some message about the CEO being an idiot. But yeah, long story short, you can look through all that, there's nothing useful in there. But if we go to the C drive, have a look in there, we see this docs folder, which is not normally there. So let's have a look in docs. And here we've got a note.txt, so we'll type that out. It says, your PHP skills suck. Contact this guy. I can't remember who that is, I did look it up. But the thing that's useful, and this took me a long time to understand when I first did this machine, and this is the bit that I don't really like. It says, I hope that you've prepared the documentation for our new app, which is obviously referring to that CHM file that we found, because that said Sniper app. And it says, drop it here when you're done with it. Now, that last part there, drop it here when you're done with it, you've got to take that very literally. And this is the thing that tripped me up. What we need to do is create a malicious CHM file, which is not difficult. We can do some Googling, find CHM file exploits, which I did straight away the first time I was attacking this. And then I thought, well, what do I do with it? Because the CHM file on its own doesn't do any kind of privilege escalation. It'll just launch any command that you want it to. But that doesn't help if we just launch a command that we could have just run here anyway ourselves. We're not gaining anything. So I looked around for ages looking at scheduled tasks and all sorts of stuff, trying to figure out what could potentially pick up this CHM file that we're going to create. And it turns out this bit where it says drop it here means literally drop it in this c/docs folder. And then some process picks it up and processes it, which is not obvious or intuitive. And I guess it's supposed to simulate your boss, your CEO guy, actually opening the file. But most Hack the Box machines don't do anything like that. So it was a bit kind of out of the ordinary, and I just think drop it here when you're done, I just took as him meaning kind of like drop it off in my office or whatever when it's done, or send it to me via email or whatever. I didn't take that so literally. But eventually I realised, because I basically exhausted all other options, I realised that, well, maybe I'll try and just put it in this docs folder. So anyway, we need to create a malicious CHM file. So let's just do CHM file exploit in Google and see what we get. So this first one here, I had a good look through, couldn't get any kind of use out of this. Yeah, I went boy with the whole details. But yeah, didn't really get anywhere with that. There's another one. Let's see if we can find it here. This one as well I looked at for a while. Didn't get anywhere with that either. It turned out there was, I can't remember the exact phrase that I used to Google it originally, but basically if we just search PowerShell like that, we'll probably find it. Yeah, so it was this one here, this out CHM. Actually, I think it was this Nishang one, but yeah. So let's just copy and paste that whole thing. Let's just open that up. So let's take this and let's copy and paste it into Notepad. Save it as a PS1 file, PowerShell. I'll just stick it on my desktop for now. Just call it out.ps1. And you'll notice in the help text it says it needs this HTML help workshop executable, so we're just going to download that as well. Oh, okay, so I've already got it installed on here. I forgot I already had it. So we're going to run it, we're going to do dot and then space and then dot slash out to PS1 to basically import it. It's kind of a weird syntax, but that's what you have to do to be able to use functions from a PowerShell file. So now we can do this out CHM, and we need to specify the payload, if I remember rightly. So we'll do that as just running netcat again from our machine. Again, I want to connect back to my machine. We do port 4466 just so it doesn't conflict with the other one that we're already using. And then we want to do ECMD as usual. And then I think we also need to do CHM path where it prompts you for that. Yeah, so it prompts you for the path to the help executable thing. So we're just going to put it in program files x86. Let's just go find it. Program files x86. It's like Microsoft HTML help or something. HTML help workshop. There we go. Copy that, paste that in there. There we go. So now that has created us this CHM file on the desktop. And when somebody opens that, it should attempt to run this command. So we need to copy that to the remote session that we've got going here. So I will stick that in our new share file here. And then we'll copy it. doc.chm. And we're going to put it in c/docs. That should have worked. So if we go into c/docs, sorry, we do ls, we can see that our file is in there at the moment, and it should get picked up yet, so it's been removed, except I've just realized I didn't actually start the netcat listener. So let's do that, 4466, and then we will try it again. It's copied, it's in there still. I guess this like scheduled task or whatever it is that simulates this guy reading it only runs every minute or something. There we go, it's gone. So hopefully we should get a connection here. I do remember the first time I did this, it took quite a while for it to actually connect. So we'll see what happens here. Okay, so we've not got anything yet, so let's try a slightly different tactic. Let's copy it over, or copy netcat over to the remote machine. And so we'll do copy item again. So we're going to copy netcat.exe. We'll stick it in that temp folder that we got. And then we can try and run it from there. So we'll do this again, but we'll do C. We'll do cmd/c as well, because that's sometimes a better way to run things for some reason. temp/nc.exe. And then all of those things. So we need to put the path in again. Program files x86. Oops. x86/html help workshop. Okay, so that's created as the doc file again. Let's copy that to our share. Overwrite the old one. Now we can copy that doc file into docs again. And we'll see if that runs any better. There we go, we got the reverse shell that time. So yeah, I don't know why it doesn't seem to want to run netcat through the remote share, even though we've already done that several times. But yeah, the first time I did this, I did have to copy it over as well. But yeah, that's just one of those things. So now we can do who am I? We're running as administrator. Again, pretty unrealistic, but that's kind of just simulating the admin opening the CHM file. So now obviously we can just go to /users /administrator/desktop, and we'll see the root.txt file. So there we go. I hope that made some kind of sense. Like I say, not the most intuitive ending, but it's still useful to know that you can make malicious CHM files and send them to someone, and if they open them, if they've got admin permissions or whatever, you're going to get admin permissions from that. But yeah, that should about do it now. I guess we'll just clean up, just remove item tmp. Yes, access denied because it's in use at the moment, so let's just exit out of there. There we go, so now we've cleaned up all the stuff that we created. So yeah, that's it. Like I say, I'll do a separate video on the port tunneling stuff, so there'll be a link to that somewhere on this video, and to explain that in more detail. And I'll apologise again for how unsmoothly the demonstration went, as usual, but at least that's a more realistic look at it, because I know when you guys do this sort of stuff, you'll encounter problems as well. Things won't go smoothly, and sometimes it feels like it's only you. It feels like everyone else it just works perfectly for, and then when you try it, stuff just doesn't work. So yeah, don't worry, that happens to the best of us as well. But yeah, that is it for this video. I will see you in the next one.